Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining on this Saturday evening on the talk on spirituality for joyful living. I'll briefly talk about myself. I am a mindfulness researcher and a coach. I coach people on how to be happy in their life using mindful practices, and it is my sheer honor to be a host for this session with Sandeep ji. And I'm a follower and a part of his group as well. So a little bit about Sandeep ji. It's like he's done so much, but I'll try to mention about all his accomplishments. Sandeep ji is a yoga teacher, mindfulness coach with 28 years of professional experience in IT and engineering. He's a graduate from IIT Kanpur and a master's from IIT Bombay. He teaches yoga and mindfulness based on his own experience of battling clinical depression for over 10 years. And it was not a spiritual calling that he went into yoga, but it was the intriguing teachings and practices of the science of the mind, which he used to heal himself and resurrect his life, and that is what he specializes in. He uses the true essence of yoga with the body mind integration that alleviates the mindfulness in addition to bringing about physical well being. He is also very well versed with the practical aspects of the yogic philosophy and brings in a unique perspective to his sessions by interweaving the philosophical teachings with the asana, pranayam, and meditation. He counsels people with mental health and emotional issues. The teachings on mindfulness are augmented by the yogic practices. These unique combination has been very effective in the entire healing process across his groups that he maintains across the globe, which has about 5,000 members, in which he disseminates the knowledge of yoga. It is our sheer pleasure as a platform Mindful Living, whose complete purpose is to actually support working professionals, to invite and have Sandeep Nigam ji today to talk about and commemorate the great occasion of Swami Vivekanand's birthday, which was 2 days ago on 12th of January. Today on 14th, it is our pleasure to have a talk from him. We are going to open the stage for Sandeep ji. He's going to talk, and then we'll also have Q&A. I invite you to please put your questions in the chat, or you could ask them towards the end. I'll be happy to read out your questions and ask those questions, seek answers from Sandeep ji, and enjoy and learn from all the teachings that he has from the yoga and mindfulness. Over to you, Sandeep ji.
Okay, so thank you very much, Kanga, for having me here today. And what better subject to talk about than the man himself, who is such an inspiration. And you see, of course, I have not been through any specific Vedantic study or teaching. I've just gathered whatever I could from my own exploration. And whatever little I know about Swami Vivekanand, when I started to read about him, my journey, the more we know, how less we know about this great man. And this is not just a cliche that I'm using, but the biggest thing about Swami Vivekanand was to bring that teachings of Vedant, which actually people thought were exclusive preserve of great pundits and scholars, to literally people, man on the street, to some common ignorant people like us, to simplify the whole teaching. And that is why I say he was so great. And we all know what he did in those trying times, in those 130 years ago. He literally carried the baton of the Hinduist teachings and made it known to the world as not just some rituals, but a great work of philosophy. That was a big achievement. So I think we all know how Narendranath became Swami Vivekanand. So as the lore goes, and that Swami Vivekanand, he was looking for God, literally. So he met many spiritual leaders of his times. And there's one question that he used to ask was, "Sir, have you seen God?" And all those teachers, those pundits, and they used to look at him with a lot of cynicism. Some thought maybe he's crazy. How can you see God? But that was his quest. And he was asking the question in all his sincerity. Of course, none could answer. Then I don't. Someone told him as that someone literally, I think, directed him to Dakshineshwar. Told him that perhaps there is a person who's half or more crazy than you are. He may have answer to your question of what is God or how do you see God. And he, as it turned out, the two met, Paramahansa Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekanand, and he put up this question. And what did Paramahansa Ramakrishna said? Yes, not only have I seen God, I can see it more clearly as you are, and you too can see him. That was the starting of the association, and the rest, as we know, is history. Swami Narendranath became Swami Vivekanand, and the 6 years that they were together, and then Swami Vivekanand carried forward the baton of the teachings of his illustrious. So those were of the very few illustrious Guru and Shishya team, both both were stalwarts. Both were stalwarts. So that's a blessing to a whole humanity and for all of us, for the wealth of spiritual legacy that they have left behind. Okay, so Swami Vivekananda was unique in so many ways. I mean, so what I've just tried to do is to jot down certain points, and I've just noted it on a piece of paper, so that I can remain focused on them rather than going all over the place. So it was one of his Swamiji's disciples. Her name was Josephine MacLeod, and she made a very remarkable comment. She said that usually when you meet someone great, and I think she quoted, I think, the Tsar of Russia, you look at that person in awe. What a great person he or she is. And what he remarked about Swami Vivekanand was that Swami Vivekanand was such a great person that he actually made you feel great, you see. So the greatness of the person is not that you look at that person in awe, but the one who can actually make you feel great. He was the one who could instill confidence into you. He could give you that strength to live this life and to rise, right? To rise. He often used one very famous shlok from Kathopanishad. Kathopanishad was one of his favorite Upanishads. There's a very nice shlok over in that Upanishad, which says, "Arise, awake, stop not till the goal is met." Of course, that is in the context of the goal being realizing your true nature, Satchit Anand. But that is what he used to motivate his students and his followers. One of the major things that he actually, Swamiji brought was, and this was a big departure from what was in vogue these days. See, when we talk about spirituality, what people thought of it as something as paying obeisance to God, to going to the temples and praying. But he brought a whole change in the perspective. He says that spirituality and religion is not just about praying or rituals, but it is to actually realize. See, religion and spirituality is realization, not just following a ritual. And what did he say? He says that if I am an immortal soul, if there is God, I must feel oneness with God. Like if I'm an immortal soul, I must be able to experience that immortality. Otherwise, none of this makes any sense. He was a man of high ideals and the practical implementation, I would say, of these spiritual practices. A very nice comment that he used to make was, and I would like to quote over here. He was a complete scholar. He was a teacher, a great orator, and he had a great mastery over language. His speeches he would really stir up people, and the expressions that he used, they were precise. They were very precise, very uplifting, and grammatically also, right? Grammatically also very esoteric. See, that was the greatness of the man he was. What did he say? He said that the whole purpose of human life is to realize the divinity within, the divinity that you are. And not just that, it's not just realizing it, but to manifest it in every movement of life. See? So you realize the divinity that you are, and to express it, not just know it, to express it in every movement of life. Just pay attention to the words that he uses. That everything I do must be an expression of that divinity. That is the whole purpose of human life. That is the whole purpose of spirituality. And the other quote that he used to say, that the first sign that you are evolving spiritually is, what do you say? Let's look at the practicality of the statement. The first sign that you are evolving spiritually is that you start becoming cheerful. See what he's saying? Such a practical interpretation of this spirituality. You start becoming cheerful. And Vedant is for everyone. It's not just, as I said, just meant for a few people, a few pundits, but for everyone to study, to express, to imbibe, and to manifest. Now, if you really see, when he says that you manifest the divinity in every movement of the life, what he is saying is, and this is where the teachings of both Paramahansa Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekanand are so practical, in the sense that they synthesize all the four yogas. So we all would be aware of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raj Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, right? Now, when he says that in every movement of the life, so whether you are doing a ritual, whether you are working in your worldly life, you're interacting with anyone, or you're doing sadhana, in every moment you are able to connect with the divinity. And when I'm talking about the synthesis of these four yogas, that is also expressed in the logo of Ramakrishna Paramahansa mission. So, Kanika, may I just request you to share that logo? Yeah, thank you. So I don't know how many of you have seen this logo, but this is the logo of the Ramakrishna Society. And interestingly, this was designed by Swami Vivekanand himself. You see? So as the story goes, when Swami Vivekanand's teaching started becoming popular in the US, and he has one of his disciples who was into printing. So he used to print some newsletter, regular newsletter. So one day he came to Swami Vivekanand saying that it would be nice if we can have a logo to use on our newsletter so that people can start identifying the name. So Swami Vivekanand was, I think, was on the breakfast table, finishing breakfast. So he just took that tissue paper and scribbled. Just, or I think it was an envelope, and he just scribbled on it. And this is what it is. Now, if you see, this is actually what we are talking about, the synthesis of 4 yogas. So what this represents, just look at this carefully. The swan within, the swan in the center, that represents Brahman, God, if you may say. The wavy waters on which the swan is floating, as it is shown, that represents Karma Yoga. There's movement in the water, so that represents Karma Yoga. The rising sun behind, that represents Jnana Yoga. The flower, that represents Bhakti Yoga. And that serpent, if you see that serpent encircling the whole of it. Now, if you can recall, in yoga we have this Bhujangasana. Bhujangasana also. So when I'm teaching Bhujangasana, I represent to the stillness. That represents Raj Yoga, or the path of meditation. So we have this Brahman in the center. So to realize God, to realize Brahman, these are the 4 paths that are enunciated, and he is synthesizing all 4 of these together: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raj Yoga. And his own guru, Paramahansa Ramakrishna, he described this in a very beautiful manner, the synthesis of these 4 yogas. He said that with my hands I do Karma Yoga. With my heart I pray. That's Bhakti Yoga. And with my mind, meditation. That's Raj Yoga. With my intellect, I study, I analyze, Shravan, Manan, that contemplation. It's Jnana Yoga. So what that means is, typically, if we literally look at it, these may seem to be very different paths, apart from Jnana Yoga, apart from Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, which are related. But Raj Yoga and Jnana Yoga specifically, it seems to be very different from Bhakti Yoga. But what Paramahansa Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekanand was saying, one is they look dissimilar, but they're actually the same. You reach the same 2 different paths. That is one. And the second thing is, if you can integrate all of these 4 together and not just pursuing one path, in fact, you can actually accelerate your whole learning as well, your whole seeking. You can actually put it in the fast track, right? So the synthesis of these yogas, this is something something very unique, which both Swami Vivekanand and Paramahansa Ramakrishna brought to this spiritual seeking. Now, as we were just talking about, when we talk about Swami Vivekanand, now mostly we remember Swami Vivekanand as by his lecture that he gave at the Parliament of Religions 130 years ago. In fact, it was 1893, September 1893. Now, of course, the Vedanta is what he started off. Vedanta he brought to the notice of the Western world, the philosophy of Vedanta. But not very few people, at least not many, know that he was also very much versed in the science of yoga. Okay, so Kanika, I think you can remove this. Thank you for that. So very few people actually know that he was also very highly versed with the science of yoga itself. He also, in fact, wrote a commentary on Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And that was, I think, in 1894-95, one of the foremost, or the very first of the few commentaries. It's a very, it's a very, it's a very thin book. So I would recommend all of you who are interested, you can buy it, or a book on Raj Yoga. It contains it. Now, and actually, it is, when we're talking about yoga, just to remind you, not that he taught the asanas. The yoga is not, when we talk about yoga, people tend to believe that it is that Hatha yoga only, the asanas which they identify with when we talk about yoga. But those of you who have been in our group and have been studying yoga would by now be having a very clear picture that yoga is much beyond that. It's not just the asana. Asana is a way to evolve in Ashtanga yoga. Yoga is a science. Yoga is a complete science in a way. Now, one very remarkable, I'll just quote one very remarkable thing that he actually talked about the science of pranayama when he was introducing this in his lectures on Raj Yoga. He starts off, in his, and as I said, right, his oratorial, his style of oration was something, it was very uplifting. There's modulation, the words, of course, when I say modulation, I was not there to listen to him, but you can actually feel it with the kind of words that he uses and the way he starts. Swami starts off by saying, pranayama is not a breathing exercise. And all of us who have been studying yoga, we are led into believing most of the time, pranayama and breathing exercise, or pranayama is a breathing exercise. And here Swami Vivekanand is telling us, pranayama is not a breathing exercise. There's a first statement he makes. It has, and then he goes on to qualify. That's more interesting. It has very little to do with breath, if anything. There's very little to do with breath, with anything. Breath is one of the ways to get to prana. See, I will not go into the details of what exactly that means. Breath is not the ways to get to the prana. And of course, breath is the grossest manifestation of the prana. So that is what Swami Vivekanand told us 130 years ago. But as it turns out, unfortunately, people are just still stuck as pranayama, as a breathing exercise, right? And then what he says about yoga, he says that the yogis, they by their own seeking, they found a way. They found a way to reach the highest through asanas, through pranayama, and through discipline. It is not something which is totally mystical or which is just a hypnosis. Through the discipline of their body and their mind, they have been able to achieve the highest. And these are his words. He goes on to say, and they invite your own inquiry. See, they're inviting you to verify. They invite verification, which is the methods that they've described. Take up those methods of asana, of pranayama, of discipline, and you can verify it for yourself. You can yourself see the evolution. And then he concludes by saying, until then, we have no right to suspect what they're saying, what they're claiming. See? So this is what he says is the science of yoga. It is not just something which is meant to read, or is not just a philosophy, but it has got very practical implementation. practical usage, which each one of us can actually use it. And he used to say it very emphatically that each one of us has the potential to become Krishna or Buddha. We all have it, just that we don't know it. And we all can rise to that level because we all have it. All it needs is sadhana, this conviction and sadhana, and we all can rise to the greatest height. Now, Swami Vivekanand, interestingly, had a large following amongst the intelligentsia also. See, and that is what makes him unique. He was not just a spiritual teacher, but the manner in which he used to teach, the conviction and the way he used to bring out these practical aspects of these philosophies that the scientists of those times, one notable scientist was a very famous American scientist. Many of you would have heard of him, called Nikola Tesla. And now Nikola Tesla, it is said he used to come and listen to Swami Vivekanand's lecture in the Parliament of Religion. And they both became very good friends. And later on, Nikola Tesla used to visit the Vedanta Society, which Swami Vivekanand had set up. And they used to have very interesting discussions on the Sankhya cosmogony of Sankhya philosophy. Nikola Tesla became very interested in Sankhya philosophy of Maharishi Kapila. So they used to discuss that, Swamiji and Nikola Tesla. And there was one very famous psychologist by the name of William James. In fact, William James was the one who actually brought this study of psychology in the American curriculum. And he also invited Swami Vivekanand to to give a lecture on Vedanta at Harvard University, in the same lecture hall where which is named William James Hall in Harvard University. So he had a wide following. He appealed to scientists, psychologists, philosophers of his time. He had a very interesting take on education. And what he said was, education is really about concentration. See, and there's a very interesting anecdote about Swami Vivekanand. When he came to Meerut, and one of his brother monks, Swami Akhandanand, he used to bring. So Swami Vivekanand, he was very fond of. He was a voracious reader. So there was this English writer called John Lubbock, and he had written some voluminous books, about eight or nine of them. And Swami Vivekanand, he asked his brother monk to get those books from the library at Meerut. So his Swami Akhandanand used to go get that voluminous novel, and Swami Vivekanand, he used to just read it in one day and give it back. So he used to go back and get another volume. After 3 or 4 days, the librarian, he got intrigued. I mean, it is such a big, thick volume. And he's seeing that he's coming every day and getting another volume. So he just asked him, I mean, for whom are you taking this? And I'm really intrigued. How can anyone just go through one thick volume in just one day? So Swami Akhandanand, he comes back and tells this to Swami Vivekanand. So Swami Vivekanand was going that way, and he just dropped into the library and just and met the librarian. And the two got chatting, and he said, I'm the one who was reading these books. So he got intrigued. He just asked him that I'm just curious as to how can you read this whole volume in just one day. So okay, you ask me any question, and I'll answer it. And the librarian asked him question, and to the amazement, he answered. He knew everything, and some of those questions he would quote verbatim from those books. You see, such was his power of concentration. So, and later on, he explained. I mean, how is it possible? So the way he says was that, see, when you are as a child, when you start to learn, how do we learn? We first learn the alphabets. Then you look at the words, right? You start to compose a word. Then as you grow up, when you're reading, you are reading a line. Then when you evolve, you can read maybe small paragraphs at one scan. Now, Swami Vivekanand, he had such immense concentration that just used to flip a page, scan it, and that used to get memorized. See, and that was because of the power of concentration. It's like the time it takes for us to take a photocopy of a page. In just that much time, or 2 minutes or 1 minute, he could actually get the gist of the entire page. And this is what he says about education. You see, what I'm trying to discover is different facets of Swami Vivekanand: spirituality, Vedanta, yoga, synthesizing, science, philosophy, education, concentration. And what did he say about it? That if I were to study again, and if I had my way, I would not be spending time on collecting facts. See, this is what now, if you look at the kind of education, this is something which we are talking about, that most of the education nowadays is about collecting information, collecting facts. This is what Swami Vivekanand said 30 years ago. I would not spend time on collecting facts. Rather, I would spend time on learning to concentrate, to focus. Two things he said. One is to focus, concentration, and the other is detachment. Focus and detachment. And this is what I will focus on if I were to do my education all over again. Now, when asked who's the most happy person, how do you define? So you had a very interesting take. The most happy person is the one who is the most unselfish. See? The most happy person is the one who is unselfish. His quotes were so precise, so uplifting, and so much to the point. And there was a very nice statement. Again, when you give, you don't look back. Because if you give and look back, the ocean dwindles to a drop. See? If you give and look back, the ocean that you are, it dwindles, it contracts to a drop. So just give with all the unselfishness that you can. The focus of his teachings, although he talked about Bhakti Yoga also, he talked about Raj Yoga also, but the focus of his teachings really was Advaita Vedanta. And that is also, I don't know how many of us are aware of what Advaita Vedanta is. I'll just try to spend some time on it. But if you go to Ramakrishna Mission, their focus of study and practice is Advait. What does that mean? Dvait means two. Advait means not the two. Without a second. Without a second. That is Advait. Advait Vedant. Right. And what does that actually mean? Now, we are all versed, we all know what Dvait is. So when we look at and when we think about spirituality and religion, and this is how we have been wired, we have been ingrained, is about worship, bhakti. And what that means is that there is a God apart from me, and I worship. I look up to that God, I worship, I pray my obeisance for having a comfortable worldly life, and also maybe for my own spiritual upliftment. So that is the Dvait part. Two, me and the God. The Advait part is to know yourself little. What that means is, if you know who you truly are, if you know who you truly are, you would recognize the infinite, not just the infinite potential that you have. It's not just even that. You would actually realize the infinity, or rather the infinite bliss that you yourself are, which you don't know. And what that means is that my identification, if we really see the way we experience this life, is always with the body, with the mind, with my emotions, with my ego. What this field of Vedanta, what this study, what this investigation tells us is, this is the ignorance with which we all live. Because we are entangled in the mind and the body complex, not knowing who we truly are. And if we know who we truly are, then you would realize that all this paraphernalia of the emotions, the way we live, the way we get driven by these emotions, you get emancipation from all of that. Now let's just do a simple meditation to get an essence of what we are really trying to say here. So let's close our eyes, all of us. Let's follow my instructions. And if you can't follow them, just listen. With your eyes closed, take a gentle, deep breath, energizing, lifting your energy, lifting and energizing your back. Hold the breath and exhale very, very slowly with hardly any movement. Bring your attention to the movement of the breath. I'm not asking you to focus on the breath. I'm asking you to be aware Breathing in, know you breathe in. Breathing out, know you breathe out. Breathing in, know you breathe in. Breathing out, know you breathe out. The knowingness of the breath, the witness of all the sensations. And as you watch, as you are aware, notice you are not the breath, you are not the movement in the breath. You are aware of the movement. Take a gentle, deep breath. Hold, exhale. Watch the movement, whatever the movements in your mind, the thoughts, the emotions. Are you those thoughts? Or are you the one that is aware of the thoughts? Let the thoughts be. Let them stay and let them go. Are you aware of the thoughts? Or are the thoughts aware of you? Are you aware of the thoughts? Or are the thoughts aware of you? You are the awareness in which the thoughts, emotions, which are nothing but sensations, appear, arise, and dissolve. Do any of the thoughts have any impact on the awareness? The awareness remains as is, infinite, expansive, vast. Take a gentle, deep breath, expanding. Hold the breath for a moment and exhale as gently as you would, with hardly any movement. repose, in the infinity that thou art. Tat tvam asi. लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Very gently become aware of the space around you. Become aware of your body. Open the eyes with harmony. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now, if you would have just noticed, I was referring to getting your attention back, back to the awareness, consciousness, which is to first understand what are these thoughts. Usually what happens, we are living in the default mode of getting identified with all the emotions, movements in the mind. This Advaita Vedanta is really to first dissect, to know who you are. You see, there's a very interesting statement made by one of the followers of Adi Shankaracharya, which says that, I forget the Sanskrit equivalent. Yeah, it is Anidam Chaitanya. Very logical statement. Nidam. Nidam means this. When you use in Sanskrit, it means not this. So whatever I can say this is, that I cannot be. Which is very logically, whatever I am aware of, I cannot be. So I'll not go into too much detail, but just to give you a flavor, it's a very interesting study. It takes time. I'm aware of the body. See? The gross body. Go one level deeper, subtler. What is it? That breath, the pran. Body, Annamaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh. Is also an awareness of the breath. The third layer, the Manomaya Kosh, the mind. I'm aware of, there's an awareness of not just the body and the breath or the prana, but also the movements in the mind, the emotions. And this whole journey takes you into that state that you are just the awareness, not the body, not the mind. As Adi Shankaracharya used to say, Mano Buddhi Ahankara Chittani Naham. See? That is the whole philosophy which Ramakrishna Mission and then Swami Vivekanand imbibed and spread across his followers and across the world. And he used a very interesting way to metaphor to describe what this is, right? Now you consider a lake. Consider a lake. What prevents us from seeing the bottom of the lake is the ripples at the surface of the lake, right? When these ripples, they subside and the surface becomes harmonious, placid, what happens? The bottom of the lake, you don't find it. You see, you don't just find it. Okay, I found something. It was always there. It gets revealed in that moment. See, it gets revealed in that moment. Now, what is the lake and what is the surface and what are the ripples? The surface or the lake is the mind. And those ripples at the surface of the lake, these are the movements in the mind, all the disturbances, all the waves, emotional upheavals, movements. And when there are movements in the mind, when the mind is moving, when the identification is always with the mind, what happens? The infinite awareness, the infinite consciousness, the deep, which is deep, infinite, just as the bottom of the ocean of the lake, it gets veiled, see, it gets covered, it gets obfuscated. And as these vrittis, they start to harmonize, the infinity is revealed in all its blazing light. It shines through. See, in Upanishads, there's a nice terminology. They use self-effulgent, swaprakashit, which means you don't find it. It reveals itself. To see the sun, you don't light a matchstick. See, the sunshine, it's in all its luminosity. It just gets covered. So if I have a curtain over here, the sun may be shining bright. It is veiled by this curtain. Of course, it's nighttime now, but if I remove, the sun is always shining. That is what, this Advaita Vedanta is about. And that's how Vivekananda used to teach. That is what Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha is actually about. See, the path of yoga also. And I'll just end by saying this. See, by an interesting anecdote. So there was one lady who came to him, one American disciple, who was in great distress, came to Swamiji, and Swami Vivekanand, so he had a lot of empathy. He looked at her with a lot of pathos, And what did he say? If only you knew who you truly are. See, if only you know who you truly are, you would realize the bliss that you always had. Yeah, yes, you are suffering because you don't know who you are. See, that's what it is. And this whole discovery of Advaita Vedanta is really about discovering. And what did Swami Vivekananda say? It is not that it is not known. it is more than known. See, it is more than known. It is known in every movement, just that you don't pay attention to it. Just don't pay attention to it. So as you do your sadhana, as you tread on this path, as you realize yourself, then what did it say? See, you start becoming much more and more cheerful. And you start manifesting this divinity. This is the divinity that you always are. Aham Brahmasmi. And as you discover it, as you get connected to it, you actually start to manifest it in every action. And more than anything else, it first helps you to become cheerful. See, this is practical Vedanta. See, this is, and that's what Swami Vivekanand brought to the table. That is not just worshipping, but it is for your own. First for your own goodness, and then to spread that goodness across the world. Okay, so I'll pause over here. It's almost 1 hour. And yeah, Kanika, back to you.
Thank you, Sandeep ji.
Thank you. Thank
We
you
have
for
some
listening to me.
we have some observations. We have Shruti who said we are a soul living in the temple as a body. So just an observation. So
No. So I would actually just give it a different perspective. You are not the soul living in a temple called body. The body literally appears in this vast awareness that you are. And if you really go to the crux of Advaita Vedanta, this body, the mind, and even this world is nothing but the appearance of this infinite awareness.
How wonderful. Yes. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your questions, share your observations, exchange your thoughts, or you could also type that in the chat box as you feel convenient. We have this great opportunity to learn about Swami Vivekananda's teachings from Sandeep ji, who is actually implementing all of those things and living his life on those teachings. How amazing. Let's use this opportunity. Sandeep ji, well, as we are waiting, I have one question, and I've always been very curious about the concept of karma yoga. And, it's like how your karma should be, or the task that you do, how that becomes, like you said, the hands are where I find my karma yoga. I'm very curious to know that can we actually be mindful about that every day when we are doing every task? And so share your perspective. Very curious about that.
Yeah. I think you're right. Karma yoga is also most misunderstood of all the yoga. So when we talk about karma yoga, usually what people think is that doing your worldly duties with all the honesty and sincerity is karma yoga. That is karma, not karma yoga. There's a difference between observing and carrying out your duties with full honesty and sincerity for yourself, for the world, and for your family. You can be a great philanthropist doing all the good things, but then it still remains as at the level of this world. Now, Karma Yoga is literally turning it around, which is, as Swami Sarvapriyanand puts it very beautifully, is to spiritualize your action. And Swami Vivekanand, he gave a very, very nice example. So his own example, Swami Sarvapriyanand gave, that once he was traveling from Lucknow to Kolkata. The flight was late in the night, 10 p.m. So as he passed through the security check, so that the security personnel over there, he was very religious. And when he saw Swami Sarvapriyanand, he just folded his hands and said, Swamiji, kuch bataiye. Tell us something about give us some message. So it was late in the night, and of course, that Swami Vivekanand, Swami Sarpadan said, this is perhaps not the place. I'll be holding up the others. He said, no, there's not too much rush. Please give us just a few words of wisdom. So he asked, Swami Sarpadan asked this security personnel, whom do you pray to? He says, Hanumanji. And in fact, when I in the morning when I'm starting for the office, I first offer my prayers and then go over for work. So Swami Sarpadan gave him a very nice piece of advice. He says, okay, you do one thing. That actually exemplifies Karma Yoga in a very nice, sweet manner. He says, and just look at what is the job of this person over there. For the few hours that he's there in that shift, he is just frisking people. It is not just draining. It is also a very thankless job. And there are some passengers who would also be rude. So day in and day out, from morning for the 8-hour shift, just frisking passengers. And what did Swami Sarpadan tell him was that every time you frisk a passenger, check a passenger, mentally you offer one flower to Bajrang Bali. See what it says, which is you're spiritualizing it. Whatever you are doing, you are not doing it for yourself or for fulfilling anything worldly, but you are offering it to the Lord. So that is what Karma Yoga in essence really is. But yes, as you said, this is something which we need to practice all the time, every moment. So that was one great example of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga. Karma outside, you are doing it outside, but turning it within, offering it within, staying connected within. That is what Karma Yoga essentially is. Now, even Adi Shankaracharya. See, Adi Shankaracharya, we know, those of you who are versed with Vedanta, he was that cutter, what to say, a staunch, a devout Advait Vedantin. Right? So, but what he also talks about this Karma Yoga, and why Karma Yoga? What does it do? What does it do? It makes you unselfish more than anything else. And Karma Yoga, what he said was, help you in Chitta Shuddhi, purifies your mind. So even for an Advait Vedantin, that I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, for that knowledge to seep into you, your mind has to be purified. You see this vessel, the mind which you have, this has to be very pure for this highest knowledge to seep in. So through Karma Yoga, you do Chitta Shuddhi. You purify your mind. And then, of course, he says Raj Yoga to stabilize your mind. And then he said this Gyan Yoga, Advait Vedanta is the highest. This is what Shankaracharya said. But of course, the Madhvacharyas and Ramanujacharyas, Advait Vedanta, they differed. He said Bhakti is the highest. But of course, there are different paths leading to the same final goal.
Yes, and Swami Vivekananda actually says any path, all four or either one is okay for us to reach the realization that we are looking for. Is that what that we should take away from this? Okay.
Yes. And what when Swami Vivekananda is saying is, he's actually quoting from Rig Veda. The very nice slope. Ekam Sat, one reality. See, there can be one reality. Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The wise men, realize and express it in different forms, right? And let me just try to explain why different ways, different forms. The thing is, let me just ask you one question. Can you define infinity? Can you quantify infinity?
No, I can't quantify. It's like just the,
You can only,
yeah,
yeah, you can
represent
only
it.
use, yeah, you can only try to represent, you can only express it, you can only represent it, right? You can only point to it, can't quantify it. Similarly, what we are talking about in seeking is we are trying to realize infinite, right? Now, you cannot quantify it, you cannot express it. So, depending on the path that you took to reach that, one is the path of bhakti. What is the path of bhakti? You surrender all your desires. What that does is it just dissolves your mind, it dissolves your ego. In the same, in the path of karma yoga, you're doing something similar. You are when you are doing your work and offering it to the Lord. Again, literally dissolving your ego till you realize that state of infinity or the highest level. What do you do in Raj Yoga? The problem is the scattered mind. Stabilize the mind, make it completely harmonious, free of free of all the vrittis. You realize your infinite nature. Gyan Yoga, the problem defined is your ignorance. Realize who you are, the infinity, infinite consciousness, infinite existence, infinite consciousness, infinite Anand being, and that helps you. That actually not helps you. That takes you to that state of infinite being that you are. So you see, all these four different paths. And not just this. Take Buddhism. In Buddhism, there is no concept of any God. If you ask a Buddhist, they will literally laugh at you. You're talking about God, there's no permanence, there's no permanent self. Where is your God? Where is your soul? But Nirvana, which Buddha says, is the same state as moksha in Vedanta, as Kaivalya in yoga. So it is, we are not knowing what infinity is. So all these mere different parts, different tools to reach the highest potential, to reach the highest state. And that highest state is Satyachit Anand, bliss, that you always are. And not all these movements, all the issues, all the problems that we are associating, all the struggles. So see, for us, literally the life, what we experience is a continuum of struggles, isn't it? And this is what the spiritual masters have told us. It is not that. It becomes that because you don't know your potential. It becomes that because you don't know who you are. Yes, it is just a question of on how you apply the principles of Vedanta to your everyday life.
Yes.
But I don't think I'll have the time to do justice. And if I just leave it halfway there, it'll maybe all the more confusing. So maybe we will deal with it separately.
Sure. I have a very interesting question that Shruti is written. She's written, can you tell about Swamiji's weakness also? Just want to be detached with that.
So that's something, of course, I don't know what, yeah, of course. See, as a human being, he would have had weaknesses. We all have had weaknesses. So that's what it is. Yes, so I'll tell you one of this some of his things that he used to say. One was he never, uh, of course, no, I won't quote it as a weakness, but one thing he was interesting about him was then when he used to go into meditation, he actually used to forget everything and everyone. And so there was then incidents when he started teaching people, and he started to gather people in at some places. So what Swami Vivekanand used to do, he was to sit in meditation, and once he closes his eyes, he just goes into that state of samadhi, and all his students are waiting over there for Swami Vivekanand to open his eyes. Half an hour passes, 45 minutes pass, 1 hour, and people just start to leave. And then after 3 hours, he used to open his eyes, very embarrassed, and feeling sorry. Then what he did was he told one of his disciples that whenever I go into that state, just utter this shok into my ears so that I can just open up my eyes.
So he would flow with the flow of his infinite consciousness. Right.
No, yes, but yes, as human beings, yeah. So I think he used to say that I have a body, right? I have a body, and this body requires rest.
Right.
Body is there. So as a body would be weak. Body may also have disease. So that I think he did acknowledge. I think I saw this. I read it somewhere that he had to take rest because there's a body. So the body will be there. See, this is what it is. As the body, as the mind, we all have our weaknesses.
Yes.
And of course, he would also have. Gautam Buddha had. And we all have it. But as that immortal, infinite consciousness, bliss, that is who we truly are. This is what we really are. Not this body and not this mind.
Sure.
Paramahansa Ramakrishna. There are incidents where he was not very good at counseling people at times. Sometimes it used to happen. He used to send them to Ma Sharda.
Yeah. Yes.
There was an incident where a lady came to him looking for some solution for a husband who was a drunkard, and he was not very comfortable in dealing with that. He used to send it to Ma Sharda. So that is what it is. As this body, as this mind, we all have our weaknesses. But as that being that we are, that is what we truly are.
Right.
Not just limited. The body is limited, the mind is limited, and we all will have weaknesses. That's the whole teaching.
Right. Thank you so much, Sandeep ji. We are almost on time. This was a 75-minute session. We have 1 minute left, and we've had great interactions. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in today. Just to give a heads up for the next session, which is on 21st of January at 5 p.m., please block your calendars for that. It's going to be a session by the author himself, and details will follow. The book name is Unburden, and the details will follow shortly. Please book your calendars for 21st of Jan, 5 p.m. And also request you to please fill the feedback form, which is shared in the chat. It is a feedback for the session, and please feel free to write your questions. That will help us organize the next sessions and also know the topics that you are more curious on. Thank you so very much for your time. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to respond to the feedback, and we are good to close then. Over to you, Ruchi, if you have anything to say or make any announcement.
No, I just want to convey my big thank you to all the participants who came here on Saturday evening. And it will take less than 30 seconds to fill the form. So please kindly do that. And please type FD in the chat box once you finish filling the form. Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep ji. It was a lovely session with you. Thank you, Kanika, for hosting the session.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thank you, Sandeep ji. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much.